Katie, should we do rock, paper, scissors on who our next guest is?
If everybody's been watching at home, beyond the last one, I've done the last 2 intros. But we have with us Jane here today, and I know that you're a listener yourself.
I am a listener.
Which is incredible and makes us feel really, really honored and excited. Yeah, we just want you to be comfortable to share your story. And I think one of the first things we started to talk about is, Jane, you've been a nurse for quite a long time. And
for apparently 16 years, but it's actually 30, Caitlin.
I don't know how to count, apparently.
Well, thank you for the
yeah, I know.
compliment.
I'm like, you look so young. Like, holy
But
cow.
let's give a round of applause for
Welcome,
Jane
Jane.
Cook. Welcome.
Thank you for being here with
Well,
us.
thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
I guarantee this isn't going to be difficult, but that's what we're here for. So
Like I said, we highly encourage tears, swear words, whatever we need.
All the above for
We've
me.
got it all for you. So, hi guys, this is Tamara,
And Caitlin.
and we are the hosts of the Gwen Effect podcast.
We just want to give a shout out to Hannah and Rachel at Blue Birch Collective for making our beautiful sign that you'll see in all of our videos on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe.
well, thank you so much. So yes, I have been a nurse for over 30 years, actually.
Okay.
I find that one hard to believe myself.
Yeah.
It's gone in a blink of an eye. I love my profession, love my profession. Times are tough right now, but that's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
But I started out general surgery in Kingston after I graduated from Belleville.
Okay.
And then I moved on to the maternity, so obstetrics and gynecology at KGH on Kid 5. And that's where I've been.
You've been there ever since.
Since 1997.
Oh my goodness.
Mhm.
Wow,
And
that's
we
incredible.
shout out, you know, Janice Russell.
Sure do.
I love Janice.
She's amazing.
Oh, she's so
Oh
good.
yes, okay, yes.
Yeah, Janice helped me deliver Luke. Oh my God, she saw me in the grossest way I've ever been in my life.
If it makes you feel any better,
We don't-
don't
yeah, it's-
acknowledge any of that. We leave it at
Oh
work.
man,
That's
yeah.
incredible. So now you're actually the charge nurse there.
I've been the charge nurse for 10 years.
What's
Wow.
a charge nurse? I
Um,
don't know. Should I know what that is?
No,
She's a boss lady.
Okay.
Yes, sort of. There's
You're so like humble and modest. You're like, yeah, I am.
there's 2 charge nurses on
Okay.
our floor. So we work like a 12-hour rotating day shift. So essentially we run the floor under
Right.
the direction of management. But yeah, it can get pretty challenging. Maternity is very challenging. Moms and babies don't stay in the hospital long if they have, everything's good. So we have high turnover rate. We see lots of new
Busy.
families, and it is heartwarming. It's a beautiful place to work. It isn't always. There's not
Right.
always great outcomes, but I have loved every minute of it.
Now that I'm thinking of it, we must have passed each other a few times.
Our nursing station is just down the hall from NICU, so I saw you walk by many
Wow.
times.
Wow.
Yeah.
Isn't that kind of like a weird, like
Again,
full circle moment of like, connecting with this person, but not having not to be in touch.
Yeah.
Interesting. Cool.
From a distance and seeing you walk
Yeah.
by and sort of knowing what happens inside an NICU and the roller coaster of emotions that you were probably going through at that time as well.
Yes.
And,
Yeah.
Are you still delivering babies right now?
I'm on the pre and postpartum unit. So
Okay.
I obviously went off at the time of Josh's accident. I've been back for almost a year now.
Okay.
Working a little bit more in the background. I'm fortunate I have a lot of support at work.
Right.
Great manager. So I've had a few different opportunities, which I've enjoyed just as much. I'm a bedside nurse at heart, so when I can
Right.
get
You're a
myself
people
in there,
person.
I'm there.
Yeah.
So
Of course.
and it's been so busy, and all the other things that
yeah.
nursing shortages and everything else. So it's kind of all hands on deck. So it is. I love my job.
And the nurses do all the work. Like,
Absolutely.
the
100%.
nurses do all the
We're
work.
a big
Like,
fan of nurses. They
Yeah.
are our angels on earth.
yeah,
I will
yeah.
say
Can't
that.
say enough good things.
Yes.
So, despite you thinking I'm much younger, I am getting closer to the end of my career, which
Okay.
kind of makes me sad. Like, I don't know that I'm ready emotionally.
Right.
And it's just always been a part of who I am.
Right.
Absolutely.
Do you dabble in things outside of work? Like, do you have any like creative outlets outside of work, or is your work your true passion?
Work is, but
Yeah.
I enjoy other things. I'm a reader. I like to think that I go to the gym a lot, but
It's all
You go
about
to the
balance,
gym more
right?
than me,
Right.
so
It's a balance.
yeah. Okay, so there might be time for that.
I like to be perpetually busy, and I feel like, especially on this journey, that I need to keep myself busy.
Right.
I'm fortunate. Fortunate. He'll laugh, but my partner's a farmer,
Okay.
so there's lots of
To
I
keep
also recognize
lots of jobs
him,
and
a farmer. My dad's a farmer as well.
Oh.
So from
Tamara has to take every opportunity ever to tell everyone that her dad's a farmer.
well, yeah, because farmers are very special.
I know,
but
support the farmers.
I'm new to
They
this area.
are.
I haven't lived here for very long. I moved here recently, but I'm well, from this area, but I'm from Hay Bay area. So I grew up on
Lots
a farm.
of farmers in there.
Absolutely, tons. And I feel like I recognize your husband or your partner from just photos because I've been doing my research. So
AKA creeping on Facebook.
So he currently farms.
Yeah, he's back in Tamworth and has a big farm back there. So,
Okay.
And now you're a farmer too.
well, I'm kind of a farmer behind the
By
computer
association.
because I'm trying to take on some book work and other things, which
All the
isn't
not
my
fun
forte,
stuff.
but I'm really trying. But it's just those things that keep me busy. And,
Yeah.
and I have family close, and my mom is close by, and
Okay.
we spend lots of time together. And
That's nice.
Moms are the best.
moms are the best.
We are.
My
We're big
mom's
fans
been,
of moms.
my
Yeah.
mom's been the
She
best.
could be our next guest.
Maybe.
Maybe, you know.
You could pick any one of my family members. I'm sure we all have a
Aw.
story.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, thank you for sharing yours with us. So, okay, do you want to dive in?
Well, I mean, there's no easy way to put it, but we know that you've had more than enough hardships in life.
I always like to know if we're talking about anybody who's lost a loved one, my favorite question has always been your favorite thing about them.
Yeah.
And it's always a really hard question to answer, but because I haven't always been privileged to know the people that we've had on the podcast to share about their loved ones. And so from my perspective, I love to hear about a little quirk or your favorite thing or something that makes you think of them because it makes me feel like I can share that.
Yeah.
Okay. Shall I
Take time.
start?
Yes, you shall.
And take your time.
Okay. So I graduated nursing school, met the love of my life. Brad was awesome, and we had a lot of fun for several years before we even decided to get married. He was a carpenter by trade. He switched over to a heavy equipment operator. But we built a house on my mom and dad's property.
Okay.
And had a great time getting used to the married life and
You're
house
doing
and
life.
mortgage and all those adulty
Yeah.
things.
And what a fun thing, building a house. That sounds like a dream.
It was fun. I'm sure anyone driving by seeing me using a nail gun in the rain was anyways.
Questionable.
But yeah, my parents lived across the road. So we, just lived doing life and getting used to all that. And then we had been married for a couple of years and had our first child, Joshua. And then a couple of years later, we had Mitchell.
Okay.
And, we were just doing that family thing.
Yeah.
Brad had lots of interest. He loved anything with a motor. He was always out in the garage tinkering with all of his stuff, and the boys were out with him. And yeah, he took the notion to buy a snowmobile, and he had experience with them when he was young. But when you get married and you're building a house, you don't have a lot of money for all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So he used it and had lots of fun with it. And in the winter of 2007, it was getting kind of late in the year, and it hadn't been a great snow year for snowmobilers. And so on February 18th, I was getting up, getting the kids ready. We were actually going to church, and he was going for a snowmobile ride with his friend. And he's, why don't you make some chili? we'll watch the first NASCAR race of the season when we get back. And
We'll meet up.
so a few hours later, the friend that he went showed up at my front door, and it was just a dark gray day, and I didn't hear Brad's snowmobile coming, and I looked, and I said, "Where's Brad?" And he just had tears in his eyes, and he said he's not coming home, and he had been in a snowmobile accident.
Oh, wow.
So anyways, those few days were a traumatic blur,
I'm sure.
and just working through all of the things. Lots of family and lots of
Yeah.
support.
How old were your kids at that time?
6 and 8.
Okay.
Both very young.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when he got in this accident, was it, did he pass away immediately?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you weren't like gifted time to say goodbye, or?
No, not at all. It was sudden. And it was, I still, even processing the day, because it was such a calm, quiet day with just a ride and
A regular
plans,
day,
just
I'm
a
sure,
regular
for you.
day and plans for the evening. And
I say this often, you know, and in you losing close loved ones, it's almost, you play it back over and over again, try to make sense of it. But there's no making sense of it because it happens so quickly, and that is death. Essentially, we're here and then we're not.
It's very interesting to hear, because I've heard Tamara recount that day that Gwen passed away so many times, and always is very chilling to hear people recount those days and what they remember, because I know going through, like, by your side and all of this, how much it really is a blur, and how much you don't remember, and how much that fight or flight is kicking in, and that adrenaline is protecting your mind and your body. And so it's always so, like, chilling to me to hear, you know, the recount of you're gonna make chili, and just how these conversations unfolded, like leading up to those moments. I'm sure that is probably, like, I don't know if that's comforting to have that, or if it's like difficult.
I mean, how did you mother on? Like, how were things in 2007? Like, I know even years ago, grief wasn't really talked about. And I know even last year, us starting up this podcast, it was very much, we learned quickly that there was a need for it to be talked about. So how was it for you handling that back then?
I think at that point, obviously my biggest concern were the boys.
Right.
Like, I just remember even seconds after hearing that Brad wasn't coming home, my mind just looked at the boys who had come to the door.
Okay.
And they're standing there, and I'm just looking at them, and it was like time stood still, and it's like, what am I going to do with these children?
Yeah.
Like, how, I think my whole life flew in front of me.
Yeah.
Right.
Which it just was so overwhelming, and
Yes.
time stood still, and I remember certain things, but then at the same time, I feel then my, like, adrenaline just kicked in. It's like, okay, I've got to do this, and I've got to keep going, and
This is what I need to do. These are the roles I now need to play.
So that's how your kids also found out as well, and they understood at that point as well.
more so Josh. Josh was such an old soul from such a young age, like hanging out at Tim Hortons with my dad, getting the town gossip, and going up to this corner store when he was just a little youngster. And I just remember him standing there and the look on his face, and it was almost like I could just see it in his eyes. It's like, I have to take care of Mom.
Right. Trying to protect you.
Did you find he tried to take on that role?
Oh, so much so.
Yeah.
And he was fiercely protective of Mitchell and I until...
Right. What a blessing that you had that opportunity, and that, you know, he was the character that he was, that you could all support each other in that time as well.
Yeah.
Right.
And they were my rocks. Like, I lived my life for them.
Of course. As a mother, that's what you do for your kids.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of what you asked, like, you know, was there counseling? Was there support? Like, I know a lot of things also happened pretty quickly after that.
Yes.
That piled on for you.
The whole it was a blur, but in terms of the counseling, like, yes, back in 2007, things were different. Like,
Right.
you couldn't, well, I couldn't just Google anything at the time and find a therapist.
Especially a local therapist or somebody you didn't necessarily have to wait for to be seen or to be heard from.
And we did go through kind of the referral process, and I made a few phone calls, more out of concern for the boys. Like, I just wanted to make sure to get the help that they needed. Their school was awesome at the time, and provided a lot of support. We did go to a couple therapists. You really have to connect with a therapist. And none of us were really feeling it with the first one. I mean, Mitchell was younger, and
Right.
but I could just tell that they weren't really connected and telling stories. And then I took the opportunity to leave the room thinking that maybe they could speak differently, but it just didn't work out great. And then life went on, and we had a lot going on. And so it just kind of another opportunity. It's like, okay, I need to just make sure that the kids are okay. Like, I just need to find somebody else. And we did, and it was a little bit more effective. Just have to laugh because Josh would sidetrack the therapist and talk so much about farming and all kinds of stories.
All the things you wanted to share about.
Yeah. And so I did take the kids quite often. And
It's quite amazing how resilient children really are.
Oh, 100%.
Isn't it?
100%. And my kids went through a lot.
Right.
And Mitchell still is going through a lot.
Yes.
So.
Yes, absolutely. So I guess, I mean, when you say there was a lot leading up to that week, did you have the week in that following week for your husband?
Yes, just within a few days. My brother-in-law lives in California. So once he arrived and we had made arrangements and had all the plans in place, just and local in Napanee, and night two, or in the evening of the wake, we had the traditional like 2 to 4, 7 to 9, and we went back to my mom and dad's in between, and of course we were all in shock. Like, Barb was 38 years old, and we were just all processing. And I think my dad was taking it very hard. We were neighbors. He was his son-in-law, and
he loved him like his own.
Yeah, we were great friends, and we hung out lots, and So I just remember kind of between the two services we were at mom and dad's, just having a bite to eat, and I just looked over at Dad, and I know he was very, very upset, but I'm like, "Are you okay?" He goes, "Yeah, good. We, should get going, and we should do this." And
do what you need to do.
So we went back into the evening visitation, and it had just started, like 10, quarter after 7, and there was line up, and I was talking to someone, obviously being at the front, and I just heard my brother behind me saying, sit him down. And I turned around and I looked at my dad, and I guess being a nurse, like, I could tell he was arresting. So a couple of friends, EMT and nurse, they did CPR on him and called 911. And so anyways, he had cardiac issues, but they were being investigated. And anyways, he didn't survive.
Wow. Take a moment.
Yeah. I can't imagine.
Sorry.
Thank you for sharing this with us. I can't imagine how that replays in your mind for you. I can't imagine how that replays in your mind.
Trying to make sense of what just happened to your husband, who was 38 years old, and now trying to, figure out what you're going to do moving forward, or what you have to do at this point, and then only having another love of your life.
Yeah, the two men besides your
Pass
kids.
away.
And he was only 65.
Yes.
Wow.
And I mean, the kids were very close to him.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think after my husband passed, I remember thinking many times, it's like, well, I've got mom and dad.
Right.
Of
Mom
course.
and dad will be there for me.
And dad, as a father figure, he'll step in that role as, naturally, in, cases they would.
And then
How did you not just pull a Britney Spears and burn the whole place down? Like, I
actually have no clue. I remember a lot, even though it was kind of just a rush blur and everybody was panicking.
Yes.
And I remember mom and I think, probably my brother and sister went to the hospital.
So you have two siblings that were there?
Older brother and a younger
Okay.
sister. And like, I'm just standing there beside Brad and thinking, I don't know what to do. Like, what? And I don't remember who it was, but it's like, what do I do? I need to go say goodbye to my dad, but I need to be here. So it was just a blur.
Yeah.
So I opted to go to the hospital.
Of course.
I think my brother-in-law took the reins and stood with his brother. And anyways, it was,
Did you get to say goodbye to your dad?
mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. And we spent time to process and say goodbye. And
Do you feel like having both of those experiences this is probably a terrible question, and like it's a difficult one, but it's an honest one. The fact that you've lost two people in your life that you love so much, so close together, one really unexpectedly and one that you got to say goodbye to, like, is there a better way if you could ever choose? Like, was it easier to say goodbye?
Sorry.
Yeah.
My dad had already passed by the time I got to the hospital.
Oh,
but
okay.
I'm sorry, it's the nurse in me, and it's like the closure and saying goodbye.
But okay.
So
you still had some of that time.
Very sudden.
Okay.
And
I can't even just imagine how.
I'm speechless.
Yeah.
Like, I knew this episode was going to be extra difficult, knowing a little bit coming into that, but I'm just speechless. And
it makes us feel like angry for you and like upset and hurt for you that happened.
Preparing for this episode, I know, a lot of people reached out and again said how beautiful of a person you are. And I don't know why hard things happen. Really shitty things happen to really good people. And just meeting you for the first time and being in your presence for half an hour, I can tell you're such a beautiful person.
Oh, thank you.
And I'm so, so angry for you. And I'm so sorry that, like, it unfortunately didn't stop there. It really didn't. And again, life is a privilege, and growing old is a privilege. But wow, I don't know how you are. People say that to me, but I look at you and I'm like, how are you the way you are? Really, truthfully.
I ask myself that a lot. And I just, sometimes certain things just stop me dead in my tracks, and it's like, is this real life?
Yeah.
Right. Is this real life?
And you almost get frustrated. I don't know if this is what you experience too, but it's almost like your brain is protecting you so much that you do have those moments where you disassociate and you're like, okay, come back to earth. This is real life. But in other moments, it just feels like a dream. Like you're just going to wake up from this nightmare.
Absolutely. And I remember those days and the little bit that I was sleeping, or I was in such overdrive, and, there's so many people around, and
yeah.
I mean, the whole community was in shock, and we're just trying to process everything. And it was just like crazy busy time. And I remember just going nonstop. Like, there's things to do. There's people to thank. And I just felt like I was outside myself.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like, this is what I need to do.
Yeah.
And then I would just stop dead in my tracks and being like, is this really happening?
Yeah.
Probably also, the healthcare worker in you too, of like trying to shut off from some of those emotions, maybe when you're going through a difficult time, to take care of what needs to be taken care of. Do you feel like that contributed to that behavior at that time?
Yes, very much so. And it continues to this day. And
right.
it is the healthcare worker. And I always am doing for other people and making sure everybody else is okay. And I think I've learned recently that can
A
be
little
a
bit
fault.
of people pleasing, right? And
Oh, I'm the definition of yes.
yeah.
And I think that's what got me through at the time. And I remember being so worried about my mom. Like she was only
Now you both
in
have
her
lost
60s.
your husbands. You're both widowed. Wow. How did your mom handle now? Again, she's grieving for you, but she's also grieving for herself.
Yeah, it was I don't even know how to describe it. It was just such an emotional time, and everybody was
Just
like, we were
surviving.
trying to be there for each other, and our houses are across the road, and there'd be people up there and then people down there, and then we'd be going back and forth, and yeah, it was
a lot. Yeah, and it's crazy when things kind of simmer down, and I don't know again if this was like for you, but they always say, the first year of grief is not essentially the easiest, but it's, again, you're still in shock for a lot of it, and then the second year hits.
Starts to set in.
That's where the complex grief comes in, and that's when, it feels real.
Very much so. And it was a busy time. We're coping with the death of both of them, and there's things that go with it, and just navigating through the whole months, years. Yeah, it was
Did your mom stay there at the house? You said that they lived across the road from you, so did she choose to stay there?
Yeah, she's
afterwards?
Absolutely there.
Is she still there?
She's
still
there.
Oh my goodness, how beautiful
Yeah,
that?
It's great having her.
Yeah.
And always was, like, for me, like, she helped me raise the boys, and and even as a daughter, when you're not having a great day or down day, and my mom was also a nurse, so we had lots in common too, and so she really helped me, and she became, the soccer mom, grandma, and the
became the other caregiver for a bit, by the sounds of things.
Yeah.
How was you're with somebody now? Terry, his name's Terry. How was love after loss? How did you find that, or how have you found it?
I think I feel where I was in life, like I was just so focused on the kids, and that was just my life. And yes, of course I thought, I'm 37 or 30 as I aged, and I thought, okay, it's only natural, and I mean, it was different back then. We didn't have the technology and everything else that we had, and it was just kind of by chance, but and it was like,
I feel like people
ready
would
to do this? Do I
love
want
to meet
do
somebody
this?
by chance these days.
And it was just such a good start, and he's just so thoughtful and so honest, and so it was just so easy. And it was great. And I mean, again, overprotective. He didn't meet the kids right away. He knew the kids were from a small town. We knew each other. Yeah. But I just thought, until I'm sure for myself, I'm just Josh clued in really quickly, but we'd meet at the corner and then drive into town for dinner and silly things like that. But
that's kind of fun, though.
Josh being, stepping in.
Oh, he was like a little detective. He knew something weird was going down. But anyways, it worked out. And once Terry did meet the boys, like, of course, he's a farmer, and Josh instantly fell in love with them, and Mitchell did too. So
very natural.
Many years later, he's awesome. He's great. Wow. I mean, he's put up with the best and worst of me. Probably a lot of the more worst stuff, but yeah.
And that's what I mean by, because I myself have a new partner after all of this. And when you say the worst of you, because I didn't know the worst of me until this. So
I'll say to both of you, from an outsider's perspective, I'm sure if you were to ask both of them, they wouldn't see it that way, right? I'm sure that you know.
Are you sure? No.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't
It
know.
depends on the day that I'm going to ask Ryan, but truly, I really think that, like, and I can speak for Ryan for sure, that it's like, you know, it does also take a special type of person to be able to nurture and love somebody who has experienced these types of losses. So I think that, you know, it's probably the way you're seeing it's easy. It's probably, I know not every moment's going to be easy, but I'm sure you're worth it.
You do. We are worth it, damn it. We're worth it.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's really wonderful. Yeah, that's a little bit of light in all of this too.
Oh, it definitely was, and it's just always,
He's always been a constant.
yeah, and
Right.
it's just always been good, always felt right, and I know things had to have been difficult for him with me having raised 2 boys on my own for 5
Right.
years, and then him stepping in. So, it just
And still
it just,
young, but at that age where they know, like, okay, you know, they know the circumstances, right? So that's a bit intimidating for him as well, I'm sure.
Yes, it was, but I think again it was just kind of a natural thing, and we
Right.
didn't put any pressure on ourselves. And he has 2 sons, and
Okay.
he obviously is a huge farm with a house and all of it. So
Right.
you know, it was just kind of an easy
Good fit.
relationship, and we really enjoyed each other's company, had lots of fun together, and
I feel like it's one of those things, and we talked about this when you and I were chatting pre-episode, you know, how people are here for a reason, a season, and a lifetime. And it sounds like, again, that, you know, Terry was a reason.
and I'm
that.
a firm believer in exactly that. Like, people cross your paths for a reason.
Right.
And yeah, he was just so understanding of everything. And, you know, even the days where the kids would piss me off, and it's like, I can handle this. I can handle this.
Right.
And he would just understand and accept it. And
Yeah.
Be
yeah,
good.
so
Wow.
Am I your lifetime? Like, is that
Absolutely, you're my lifetime. Are you kidding? There's no doubt about it, girl.
okay?
You are my lifetime. I haven't seen Katie for a week because I've been
She's
sick.
been sick.
oh,
Yes.
I know.
So
I just
it's-
lost my mind.
Aw.
We call each other. We're like, "Are you okay? Yeah. Are you okay? Okay. Yeah. We're good. All right.
Yeah.
Check in
Talk
again
to you tomorrow.
So I guess so. Life carried on.
Life
Grief,
carried on.
you know, comes and goes. As we know, it has no timeline, and it's not a straight, cozy ride. It
Not at all.
comes with many ups and downs. Tell us, you know, what's kind of
What happened next
What's
for
next?
what's
Yeah, life was going. I had great support with the kids. Like, we
Yeah.
had, you know, great support. Josh had lots of interests, and
And I think growing up in this community, in the village,
It
it's
takes
such
a village.
close. Yeah, it takes a village
Yes.
essentially.
yeah, absolutely. And people would offer to take the kids places and do things. And going through that grief, like, it just took, I was just so thankful for it. Like, yes, please take them to whatever activity, and they are enjoying it. And it just gives me a few minutes
Yeah, it allows you to just not do
to,
anything. Right.
but we continue to have great support. Like, Josh took a passion. My dad had a few cattle, hobby farm, which my mom kept for many years after his passing. Josh took an interest in it. He took an interest in 4-H, you know, halter leading cattle around the ring. He loved it. We had great support from Dave, who I'll shout out because he was amazing with Josh and got him through many years of showing cattle. And it was a very important part of Josh's life and who he was. And so we had lots of support. My sister and brother-in-law at the time, 2 young kids, and we're a fairly close-knit family, so spent a lot of time with them, and Uncle Paul would take them fishing and whatnot. And yeah, so life
Sounds like
kept
you
going.
never went inside. It sounds like everything was just outside.
Well, we just live down the river, and we have beautiful property, so we're outside a lot.
You do. I
imagine.
love your gardens, by the way. Do you like to garden?
Well, no.
No. You have a nice landscape. Did you have a professional design your landscape?
No, that was
at all?
all me after. We
Wow.
built the house, so for many years it was just dirt flower beds, but just recently I've become, I don't know, a plant mom, and my house is full of plants. And anyways,
Tamara's going to invite herself over. I just said Tamara's going to invite herself over. We went to New York in October. There was no plant left untouched in New York.
If you see a nice plant, you have to go and talk to it.
Every single plant.
This morning,
Is this real?
I was talking to my plant. I was watering her, and I'm like, oh, and Ryan's like, what? And he's like, what are you saying? And I'm like, I'm not talking to you. And he goes, well, who are you talking to? And I go, my ivy. Shut up. Let me be. Did you find that after your most recent loss, you've been more like loving plants or
well, I think
into that kind of thing?
Out of nowhere, because obviously, you have a lot of planters and plants
people
after.
gift a lot of
And so I guess for no reason in particular, but thought, well, I'll replant them. My mom has a green thumb, and you go up and her African violets look beautiful.
Oh.
So I'm like, okay, well, I'll just try to replant
How hard
them.
could it be?
Right? But I
For
think
me.
I have something in my favor that I have tons of bright light. So yeah, they're surviving quite nicely. It looks like a bit of a jungle.
Green's actually a very uplifting color. So they say a lot of people that experience grief or traumatic events, it's weird that they will go towards green. And plants and
Did you just make that up? That
no,
sounds
it's a
made up.
very real thing. Green is a very uplifting, cheery color. Google it.
I will.
Joey, Google that
Fact
shit.
check.
But it is a real thing. And with grief, it's just something about going and caring for plants or getting in the dirt, and it's just very grounding for people.
Yeah.
Maybe not for you, Caitlin, but for others.
I remember when I was little, this is just sidetrack that I'll just interject for myself for 1 second. When I was little, I couldn't get my hands dirty. Even now, I only use lotion sticks because I hate the feeling of like having lotion on my hands. Maybe I'm autistic.
True.
I don't know.
I've seen you.
I know.
It's
Anyways,
like
I would
stick.
cry. I would be at daycare. My mom would get a phone call and be like, she won't stop crying. I would cry if I got
Maybe it's a sensory thing.
I don't know.
Oh, maybe.
Weird.
Just for the record, hold on. Green is a color that can evoke powerful emotions and healing.
Okay.
Green is a color that can provoke powerful emotions and healing. Our
So-
producer just Googled it.
I do have a not fun fact, but a fact about that, because it's part of, I guess, this whole conversation, but I've spent some time in funeral homes.
Okay.
A lot of them are green.
Really? Actually, yeah.
Wow. And a lot of them have plants.
Yes.
Green. Yeah. But like not really like a nice green.
But it's green.
The one I'm thinking of.
Oh,
Okay.
the one I'm thinking of.
I
wasn't a nice green.
honestly thought he was opening that door to be like, stop talking about yourself.
We get in trouble sometimes.
Yeah. I'll get like a peek through.
He's a fact finder.
But no, I was just interested because I know I've talked to a lot of other moms who've lost or people and going through difficult times, and they'll be like, it's funny, I see you a green thumb, and I've recently done this, and you've recently.
I have a fig tree.
She has a fig tree. Could you imagine?
Oh.
Those are very hard to
No,
handle.
it's not. I literally don't even go near it, and then I water it 1 time a week.
They're like men. The more they're neglected,
Yeah.
the more they thrive.
It's
They
working
want-
out
they
great.
more, yeah.
Yeah,
true.
it's actually a really toxic relationship. Me and this plant right now.
It's only the beginning. You
Yeah.
wait.
Yeah, it's almost died a couple of times. But yeah, the more I ignore it, better it gets.
It's good.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so you were mentioning you're spending a lot of time with your family because you are very close knit, and you have your brother and sister. Is that kind of where your story leads next? Okay.
So it brings us up to 2010.
Okay.
So this all happened
was
in
not that-
07,
Yeah, that was not
Yes.
that much longer.
and then this was in 2010.
Yeah. So in the late summer, fall of 2010, we were again close with my sister, brother-in-law. Their children aren't too far, actually. They were very close in age, so we spent a lot of time together all the time, but particularly in that summer. They had a pool. We made use of it.
Yeah.
When the river wasn't swimmable. So my niece Claire, so she was the only girl of the family, might I add, and I was Aunt Jane. We had a special bond. But she just had a terrible summer. Like, she was not feeling good. She was exhausted. She didn't have a great appetite sometimes. And then she would spring around and she'd be okay. And then she developed some leg pain and just around the start of school. And my sister had her to the doctor several times.
How old was she, sorry?
She was 10.
Okay.
Yeah, so she was born 2000, 2 weeks earlier than Mitchell.
Okay.
3 weeks. So anyways, it was getting through September and she developed some leg pain and some back pain, and she was beautiful girl, dark hair, dark complexion, dark eyes, like just beautiful, but she was looking unwell.
Right.
You could
Yeah.
know, you knew.
Yeah.
something.
So my sister had her to the doctor a few times and to COPC a few times. And
Is your sister in healthcare as well, or just
No.
you and your mom?
no, just mom and I. So anyways, she had been to the appointments, and then it was the last week of September, so duck hunting season.
Mm-hmm.
My brother-in-law went duck hunting, and she had called me to come back to see Claire. She goes, she just, she hadn't been able to get through school a couple of days, for a couple of weeks. She'd make it through half a day of school and then come home.
Right.
Anyways, she had a really rough week that week, and she was sleeping a lot. And so that it was a Saturday night, and she just was so unwell. And I said, let's just take her into Napanee Hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a dark, kind of rainy night, and we went in, and she went in, like she just looked sickly. And they had taken her in, and Mom and I were in the waiting room, and the doctor came and asked for me and said, can you come back here? And she was trying to get the words out and say to my sister, and she goes, we did blood work on her, and I just don't understand. Everything is pointing towards leukemia or lymphoma.
Wow.
And again, it was one of those minutes. The emerge department was crazy busy, and it just stopped.
Mm-hmm.
And so Napanee was amazing, transferred us into Kingston and confirmed the diagnosis of leukemia, and didn't have a lot of time to think about things because treatment needed to start soon.
Mm-hmm.
It's an intensive treatment, so it did start almost immediately. And
Was she admitted?
she
from
was
there?
admitted initially, and she did fairly well. It was a lot of treatment. It was a heavy treatment, and we were, once she was discharged, we were back in and out of
Right.
clinic. She would, if she did get sick because of, immunity, she'd be readmitted. We spent lots of nights in the hospital.
Right.
Kind of reassured along the way that, leukemia is cancer, but, treatment, it's hopefully a good prognosis. And so, and she was such a trooper, such a trooper.
Being at her age too, she's well aware probably of the circumstances.
Yeah, and I think even she was a smart little girl and picked up on everything like kids in that position usually do, but her treatments were complex. Her home medications were complex, and she had it all down pat. She was
Impressive.
What was
such
your
a
favorite memory
sweetie.
of her? I've got to ask.
Well, I don't even know if my sister knows this one.
She will soon.
Yeah, she's gonna know. But during one of her stays in the hospital, technology was just becoming a thing. So hours and hours in the hospital. So my sister and Claire set up an email account for her. So she would always email Aunt Jane just for fun.
Oh.
And I still have the email, but it's hard spending a lot of time in the hospital in a little room and with a lot going on. And Claire would get very frustrated. Like, she was a child. She did not want to be in the hospital. And so she'd often be like, Aunt Jane, can you come in and have a sleepover with me so my mom can go home? Oh, that's,
Yeah.
But I have this email that's like, Dear Aunt Jane, please come as soon as possible. My mommy's being a monkey's hiney, and I want you to come and stay with me.
More or less, I need a break.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
But she was just so, she was
Just so
such,
funny, charismatic.
Oh, she was, and she was our only girl.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Out of all the boys. So she had a brother, you said?
Mhm, yeah.
Okay. And then your two boys.
Yeah.
That's so cute. So she was on a heavy treatment and she was going to a lot of appointments. She at that point had just been traveling back and forth for
So how long did they think this was going on for?
It was a 2-year treatment. There was a few bumps along the way, but then in May, 8-10 months after treatment started, she was admitted into the hospital with a fever, and they did different treatments. And again, still, you know, kids are resilient and we'll treat this, and just, I guess it was the long weekend of May that year. Just one thing after another was happening, and she just was more unwell and more unwell. And so, of course, I worked 5 floors down.
I was going to say, were you able to touch in with her?
So she wasn't feeling well. Like, her condition just wasn't great. But again, reassured. We're doing this, we're doing that. So I would always go to work early and go visit her. And I was on a night shift on the Saturday, and I went up at 5:30, and she really looked unwell. And I said to Kelly, like, as you know, in terms of doctors, or what are they doing? And asked a couple of the nurses, and they're like, yeah, we're going to have a doctor come in to see her shortly. And I went to work and had called up to the room and checking in on them a few times, and was going about my shift, and I was just coming out of a patient's room, and I heard code pink, kid 10, and I instantly knew.
What does pink mean?
Pediatric cardiac arrest.
Okay.
So I raced up, and Kelly was just
Kelly's
in
your
shock.
sister?
Yeah, and she had been with her, and again, a blur, but someone had called lots of her family, and they were all coming in, and anyways, they did the best they could, and
Her body was tired.
When you heard that code, did you feel like you knew at that point that was for Claire?
I had been up on my break, and she just they had the monitor on her, and like her heart rate was really high, but she gave me the thumbs up before I left and asked me how many babies were being born tonight. And I just, anyways, that I went back to work. And so
It's one of those things, like you're here and then you're not.
Yeah, and I think we just had in the back of our mind that she was doing well at periods, and I think we just we were holding on to the hope and the dream that everybody was right, and this would be all behind us before we knew it. And so again, it was a shock.
Yeah, you don't expect these things, especially when you're being told a lot of hopeful things. I think that it is, from my perspective, it is a really sweet thing that one of those last interactions that you had with her, that thumbs up, I feel like, to me, that screams her personality and who she was, right? In terms of positivity and resilience. Absolutely.
And despite going through everything she did, she was optimistic, and she was a trooper, and it'll be okay, Aunt Jane. And
reassuring others, right? When she was sick.
Yeah.
Reassuring
absolutely.
others.
Yeah, so.
We had a mom, I don't know if you ever listened to it, we had a mom in about, I guess, last fall, and her little boy has leukemia. Not had, but has, and is again going through the treatment and the extensiveness and how quick things can change. She'd often say, there's your treatments that are very heavy, but in between as well. If there's the slightest fever or the slightest something's off, it's constant.
And I remember exactly that, and monitoring so closely, and she would have this treatment, so you expect by day 1 she'd be a little more susceptible, or day 3, or however and the phone calls, always we were back and forth, how's she doing, and it was just that constant, and again, being the nurse and aunt and kind of going into overdrive, wanting to give my sister and brother-in-law a break and
Yeah.
taking her to treatments and
Doing what you know, showing up. You're like, okay, I gotta put I'm a nurse, but I'm also
And it
an
becomes
auntie,
though like what we've seen from Dr. Jackie, like I still follow her story, you know, with her son, and like it becomes a full-time job almost, like committing to those treatments, committing to your child that way. So we commend and want to shout out your sister Kelly for that, because I can't imagine that was an easy job as a parent.
oh, they did an amazing job. It was
Yeah.
an intense, unfortunately, few months.
Right.
But yeah.
Okay. I know that when we had just started, you talked about how you supported your sister after that loss of a child. What did that look like? Are they in Belleville or
No,
around
they
an
just
area?
live nearby.
Okay.
10 minutes away. It was just so surreal.
Right.
being back there
Like
again.
being back there and just processing Claire's passing, and like it just, again, it's like, is this really happening?
Right.
And we had already experienced Brad and Dad, but a child,
Yeah.
like
The innocence.
a child, like just going through, we had a smaller family service for her, and just going, it was so surreal, like everything, the small pink casket and
Right.
putting her stuffies in with her, and yeah, it was
These things shouldn't happen,
mm-hmm.
right? Until they happen to you, and you're the one putting those pink stuffies, or you're the one choosing that casket.
I think what it is too, like having that experience at Gwen's funeral too, it's like a lot of people aren't conditioned or in their life, like until a certain age, have experienced loss. And I think when you do experience loss, it's, you know, oftentimes like, you know, the great grandpa that maybe you met twice, like not always, but I do think that sometimes people are conditioned to experience death as like a certain way. And so
Especially in this culture, you know, there's just, we have to mourn and we get over it.
but
However
I think
that looks like.
the
right?
like the funeral of a child though,
Yeah.
it's just you could never prepare, or you could never like imagine what it looks like or feels like to be at something like that. It's completely different because I mean, of course, with anybody in loss, there's all these what ifs and what could this be, right? And you think about future, but from a child, right? It just feels like there should be so much more time. And
Absolutely.
that's what our perspective has been.
Oh, okay. Anybody got shots of tequila?
You didn't tell me
Is
that
this
was
tequila?
Is this, got one there? Pass it around. No, I indulged in a little bit of a drink before I came here.
Help jitter the nerves. Jitter the nerves.
I'm on antibiotics too, and I shouldn't have done that. I'm like, can I, do you think? No, you just gotta do what you gotta do sometimes. But no, yeah. Again, I'm speechless. I'm speechless. And I think the thing that really resonated with me after losing Gwendolyn was, and I know it can resonate with you too, is some things happen and there's just no explanation for it. And I think that's the most frustrating thing to hear as a person, because we want an explanation for everything. We have, you know, it's almost like we deserve to know or have that, but really sometimes there isn't any explanation.
right.
You know, or why sometimes it's not answered. And I still have a hard time with that. And I'm sure you do too in a lot of your cases. And you know, and the most recent one is, have I not had enough? Right? Have you?
Well, I do. Yeah, I ask myself why every day. It's like, what did I do to deserve this? Why me? Why? You know, there's a lot of shitty people in the world.
A lot of shitty people.
And there's a lot of people that have done shitty things that don't deserve. Like, you just try to wrap your mind around things like that, and it's like, what did any of my people do? What did I do? But it just doesn't make sense. And you always ask yourself why.
Mm-hmm.
There's no answer.
No rationale to any of it. Mm-hmm. That's sometimes what makes it harder to grieve, is that lack of.
Yeah.
And the anger.
Yeah. And with nowhere to go.
Anger's a very big
I
thing.
knew.
That was me.
Oh, I know.
That's
I know
what
you're going
used
to say
use all the time.
grief is anger with nowhere to go.
No, grief is all the love in the world.
Oh.
Nowhere for it to go.
Okay.
That's something that I've been dealing with a lot lately, is the anger that comes with grief.
Mm-hmm. I just I have had a lot of anger moments. I am not normally an angry person.
No.
I'm not physically.
Of course.
But I remember a hot summer day, and I don't remember the circumstances around it. And it was like after Brad and Dad had passed. And I think it was, I don't even know what the situation was, but I was sweeping my back patio off, and I had kind of a barbecue that didn't really work good. And I picked that thing up and I threw it over the friggin' railing. I don't know where the strength come from, but it smashed all over it. Made me feel good.
Yeah.
I can get
But
a
I
new
don't
one.
know where it came from, but
Yeah.
anyways.
And that's just,
Or just, a thought goes through your mind and you're just like,
intrusive
what
thoughts.
the hell? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, why? Like, what the fuck? Like, and then you just physically feel angry.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's a roller coaster of emotions.
Yeah. That's, to say the least, definitely. Okay, Katie. You want to...
Take it from here.
I do have to say, I didn't know you until today, but Josh, I knew Josh. I was a bartender at the Queen's for many, many years.
I know that.
Many moons.
The things
did
she's
I ever
seen.
see you there too? Maybe I'm not sure.
that
I
was my really way many years ago hanging.
I know we hosted a lot of like parties,
Birthday parties.
certain
I
things
remember
like that.
being there for a couple of parties, but yeah, perhaps.
Perhaps, again, small town, but
My brother was the bouncer there, which was obviously very effective and needed.
for those that don't know, the Queen's Tavern is definitely
Wild.
A landmark. It's a
a
legend.
landmark. It's a legend to this area. So yes, I bartended there for a long time, and when I got pregnant with Gwendolyn, Josh would always come in every Friday night and give my belly a little rub, and every Friday night, how are you doing? Let me see you from the side, and of course compliment me and make me feel good in this new stage of my life. Not feeling the best and having to be there until 3 a.m. serving alcoholic people, but not alcohol. I shouldn't say that. I should say,
People having a good
alcohol
time
too.
when you were
when
not.
I had to be bone sober. But he was a very, very special person to many people. And I know I have very close friends that think a lot of him.
Well,
and
thank you.
miss him dearly. So I just...
Thank you for saying that. This is going to be the hard one.
Take your time.
I'm sure it never gets old for you to hear new connections and, what a wonderful person that he was.
I've learned a lot about Josh since he passed.
Of course.
Through people. He was an adult, so, he was getting into life himself, meeting a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And I've just learned a lot about him and the type of person that he was when he was out of my sight. And he has impacted a lot of people's lives.
Right.
I've gotten a lot of messages. I've got a lot of messages from his friends' moms or dads to be, he was at our house, and I just wanted to let you know that he was a great kid. You raised a great kid, and he impacted my son's life, it's been so heartwarming. I love to hear the stories.
Of course. Yeah, of course.
So, yes, again, for our listeners, if Jane hasn't had enough to this point...
how are you feeling right now?
It'll be...
I'm actually a little overwhelmed.
Yeah.
It just, again,
all
is this
comes
really life?
Yeah.
And this is a true story.
Yeah.
Like at the time of his passing, I got quite a few messages. It's like, you have to listen to this song.
Okay.
So the infamous song by Hardy, Give Heaven Some Hell.
Yeah.
And when you listen to all those words, he had a wild side, but he had amazing grace. Like those were the ones as his mom that stood out to me.
Right.
All the words did, but he did. He just had such a way of, he was so,
He was a big teddy.
he was. And he'd come home, and I remember a fairly young age, he was driving, and I had sent him to AMP or Metro. And he's like, oh, Mom, let's walk out the parking lot. Some lady was struggling to get her groceries in the car, and so I helped her, and she called me a fine young feller. And she smiled and walked away. And he goes, you know what? From this day on, if I can make one person smile a day, I've had a good day. And I swear
He did.
and if, I know he made me smile, laugh, roll my eyes, frown, laugh again, daily.
Did you see a lot of him in like Brad or your his dad in him? Yeah.
I feel like thinking back, and especially thinking up to this podcast, like thinking about Brad and thinking about Josh, like they were cut from the same cloth.
Right.
They were, Josh was a little more maybe outgoing, but I think that's my side of the family.
Right.
They were a lot of similarities, they enjoyed the same things, you know, motors and Dodge trucks and four-wheelers and that kind of thing. But,
yeah. I think before Josh passed, there was always burnouts in front of your house.
oh boy.
Those are probably half from Joe, to be honest.
No, but before him passing, I always remember, you know, traveling through, seeing them, and after he passed too.
Oh boy.
There was a lot of black rubber laid.
People would just randomly
Yes.
stop and it makes it's
makes
fine.
Somebody as a mother who's lost, like, I mean, that would.
I feel like obviously he was who he was, and he had such close friends and friends that meant so much to him, and I feel like, you know, they were grieving too, and
of course,
if laying rubber made them feel better, I mean,
because that's what he'd be doing.
Yep.
Right.
And I'm sure, well, his funeral.
Yeah. Had to repave the parking lot, I heard. No,
tell us about it.
The funeral?
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah. I struggled. I didn't know how to go about, I mean, obviously I've got experience, but in my mind it's like, how do I do this to honor Josh?
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's... obviously we're shocked, and then just as the days passed, and we just kind of, with the help of some good friends, we came up with the best, if you can say that, but it was the best way to honor him. Like, well, I mean, it was I guess explained exactly who he was. Like, there was over 600 people there,
right?
And it was just such a tribute to him, and he was always the life of the party, and I just felt that he deserved that. But then there was things going through my mind, just in terms of church and the type of service.
Right.
I grew up Catholic. We go to Centerville Church. We always have. You go to college and don't go to church so much, but it just, for some reason, always drew me back and it grounded me, and I would go to church. And after Brad died, I just didn't, the kids were 6 and 8 and they came to church with me, but then, you know, as they were a little older, and I more gave them the option.
Right.
And I remember Josh kind of was like, I don't want to go. I don't feel like I should go. Like, I'm mad at God right now. Anyways, time went by and I let them decide. And it wasn't until Josh and I had a conversation before his passing, and he had said he went out to his dad's gravesite a lot, and he goes, I know I don't go to church, but I talk to God a lot. There's got to be a reason for all of this, because Josh struggled a lot with the fact that he lost his dad.
Absolutely, at a young age.
And so just those words just kind of echoed as we were planning everything. And it's like, okay, yes, we're going to do a service at a church. And I had talked to my priest and explained this. And I said, like, I can't, I want this for Josh, but I also don't want it, I didn't want it to be very, very formal. So we were in our comfy plaids and jeans and
Camo.
Yeah, camo and yeah. And his friends had set up displays out. Josh loved Dodge trucks, and he had this flatbed that he had all kinds of big ideas for. And they had set a display up, and girls did slideshows, and it was beautiful. I to this day don't know how I found the strength or did it. I wanted to do his eulogy. And I knew I couldn't stand up there, but I just felt I needed to honor him and talk. I was his mom.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I just wasn't sleeping very much and put pen to paper, and before I knew it, I had pages and pages about him. And then I was just trying to figure out how best to read this. Like, there's no way I could do it. And I went for a walk down behind my house, and there's a beautiful river, and we spent tons and tons of time, and it just hit me. It's like modern technology. I'm going to record it. And I sat in a lawn chair and recorded it. And I'm just thankful I did, because, there's a few stories, and it just kind of honored who he was from his mom's perspective.
Yeah. And how brave you were to be able to take that time and the opportunity to still make sure that that perspective came from you.
Yeah, it was difficult, very hard, but I'm glad I did it. And I read it very often, and everything's just so true, and it was so Josh and his short life.
What were some of the stories that you shared?
Well, he was on his first four-wheeler when he was 3.
Okay.
3.
Yeah. And I'm a nurse. But Brad had
I was going to say, did Brad have anything to do with it?
And so we were somewhere actually in the village, and someone's like, oh, I have an old Suzuki that my kids had, but it's got tons of dust on it and needs lots of work. So Brad's like, oh, I think we'll buy it. The boys will use it, but I'll have to work on it, so it's going to take me a year or so. No big hurry. I'm like, okay. I went to work on a Saturday. I come home at 3:00. I'm driving down my road, and I was like, what is that in the field? And it was this little orange flag, and I'm like, oh my God. Like, I don't even know how I pulled in the driveway. My heart was racing, and I pull in, is like, is that okay? And Brad's like, he picked it up so naturally. He's been great. And actually, we live right on a busy road. And they had gone in and bought Josh a helmet. It's fine, it's going around. So we're apparently earlier that day, because he already had a path worn in the field. But there was actually a cop pulled over.
Oh, man.
And he went, he called Josh, and Josh kind of pulled over. And the cop's like, good for you. You've got your helmet on, and it's done up properly, and this and that. And commended him. So here Josh is 3 years old.
Oh my
comes
gosh.
over when I got home, and he's like, Mom, don't yell at Dad. Like, he's 3. Mom, don't yell at Dad. I wanted to. And the police said I was doing a good job.
Oh, the police? Okay, yeah.
I'm like, okay, there's a lot.
Police, hold on, sit down.
The whole story's coming out now. I didn't tell all of it, but yes, he was like 3 on.
Wow.
Yeah, but and right up to the weekend before he left, and ironically, it was duck hunting, as for my niece, and he flew in the house, and he was like, I want to go, we're going to the camp, we're going to have a great weekend, duck hunting, can't wait to get there. And he's doing his usual, because he never got organized and ready to go anywhere.
I mean, it's
ahead of time.
Duckmas Eve, right? Like, everyone, it's a big deal.
So he was throwing stuff together, and he was kind of laughing. He goes, I have to apologize to the guys at work on Monday because I was pushing them to get done so we can get out. So anyways, he was just that kind of totally disorganized, random fart in a mitt kind of human. But I love him.
But it worked for
it.
him, right? It worked for him.
Oh my gosh, I couldn't imagine.
I envy people like that. That can just, pick up and go.
But yeah,
You're like that when we go on any vacation.
Oh my God. Yeah, on a vacation, but not in normal daily lives. I could never.
I wish I was more like that.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he always got where he needed to go and had what he needed to have.
So, Jane, was that the last time you had with Josh? Was his coming in and
Yeah,
Throwing his big plans.
yeah, and it was, as I said, like typical. He'd fly in and he'd have plans, and it'd just be a whirlwind. And he was getting his stuff together. And his favorite saying, whenever he left the house, was "Love you, bye," and he would yell it. So when he put his last bag in his truck, and it's like, "See you Sunday, love you, bye."
didn't think much of it. Yeah.
Was your other son going with him?
No, my other son worked. Mitchell worked at Goodyear,
Okay.
so he was working nights that weekend.
Okay.
Josh went with like his best lifelong friends camp,
Okay.
and yeah, he was so excited about it, and he was determined it was going to be a good weekend, and he was with a great group of friends, and
Right.
yeah,
Just like any other weekend, right?
Mm-hmm.
But duck weekend.
Yeah, and just the group that he was with, I think, yeah, like it was a great group. He had great friends, and
Yeah.
it was
Well, you
good.
spend so much time worrying as a mother too, right?
Mhm.
I mean, and as a nurse, as a mother, and experiencing loss, I'm sure you spend a lot of time worrying. And I think it probably brought you comfort, the group he was with and
Yeah,
what he was doing.
And I just think that, like, going back talking about like the losses before Josh, like I think so many times after Claire passed, and I mean Josh was Josh, and it's like, oh, I'd hear him pull in the driveway, I'd be like, oh, like moms do. But I also think there was a part of me that was like, we have been through so much shit
Yep.
that nothing else can happen.
Right.
And I think I don't know, took it for granted, or just kind of lived like that, and just thinking like, I'd always, the mom thing, and I'd give him shit and make good choices and do this and do that. But again, the day of his accident, I'd been talking to him, and it was just a calm day. He was heading back to camp and got to be there by 3 for the hunt. And I had talked to him.
Right.
So.
I mean, I don't think you're naive in that perspective. I think anybody who's gone through the things that you've gone through would have that same attitude of like nothing else could possibly happen.
I think it's a very natural feeling. I remember finally letting my guard down with Gwendolyn and thinking, like, again, like you said, there's been so much shit to this point that's happened in our lives. Like, things are going to be good. This is good. Things are good. And I started, staying out a little later with her, doing a little bit more visiting with people. She was being a toddler and, going to play groups, and was enrolled in gymnastics and soon to go to dance class. And then I felt as soon as I kind of let that guard dropped, she suddenly passes. So again, how could I be so naive? How could I think that we were untouchable? Or did I not do something that I should have done at that moment, or seen, or how could I have stopped this from happening? I think it's of course we're going to torture ourselves.
Is the other's perspective too of like, though, constantly living in this state of fear and worry and fight or flight and not trusting you know, like every day. And just that constant anxiety, you
I
know.
think my thought process has changed now because I worry nonstop. Like poor Mitchell. He gets how many texts? Where you at? Where you at? Where you at? I have Terry on Find a Friend, and if he's in fields, and if his little icon's not moving, I have to wait. You
think the worst, and
I just
you're conditioned to think that way.
That's all I can think about.
How has your journey healing been since losing Josh? It'll be 2 years this year?
September. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, exactly what you said a little bit earlier. I feel like the whole first year was a blur. It just, things I feel like are setting in more and processing more, and just life goes on, as weird as it is. Like I've experienced all this happening to me, and life is still going on. And I think after the first year, everything's just hitting differently. Like it's
more intense, would you say?
Yeah. Even, you know, like our last Christmas together, we had a great Christmas. Like Josh would bitch and complain about Christmas being materialistic and what should he get everybody, and he'd put a lot of pressure on himself. But then come the day, he was like literally a 2-year-old. And our last Christmas, I worked because my shifts had changed, and it was the first Christmas I'd worked in a long time because I had done Monday to Friday. And he kept messaging me all day long, how's your day? How's your day? Christmas baby born, how's your day? And he's like, we're going to wait until you get home to open presents.
Aww.
But I got home, the boys and Terry and I mean, it was a little bit later, but we just had such a great Christmas. And it's good memories, but Christmas is never going to be the same.
Painful.
Again.
And the holidays, and, you know, life is going on. And I guess if anything, like, a lot has happened to me. It's life. But when things happen in other people's life, I'm happy for them.
Of course.
I'm happy. Like, you know, I'm thankful for the kids that I met through Josh, and I'm happy to see everything happening, but for them, as they, you know, adult and babies and marriage and all that. But just everything now just has a dark.
It's envy, right? I mean, it's you can experience joy and anger or guilt at that same time, and you know, I get that. I get the whole growing up. You know, I see Katie's kids who, again, were Gwen's age, and they're going to school, and Gwen will never go to school.
Yeah.
Or Josh, you know.
Josh always, even from a young age, like, we're going to tear the D floor up at my wedding, Mom. Yeah. So you better start practicing. And it's just, you know, things like that.
You envy that, and you get angry, and it's like you look around and you're like, why can't I have that moment? Why did I get... I think, you know, we grieve for us, but we also grieve for them, right? As our child, we grieve the fact that they won't be able to have that like it should have been.
Or for yourself.
And grieve ourselves. It's I always tell everybody, you know, this club or this group of mothers who've lost their children is the worst thing to be in, but it's also the strongest.
Yeah, absolutely.
It really is, because I remember at a young age, my mom would always say, you know, if anything were to happen to you, I couldn't live. And here we are living.
Yeah.
Here we are living.
It almost feels unreal. Like it.
Again, it doesn't, it's like, why do I get to live, but they don't? You know, over and over again. Why wasn't take me? Or again, you question so much, right? So yeah, I can resonate with that as well when you say, you know, you look around and
I remember that
life continues.
Going back, like Claire and Mitchell are the same age, and Mitchell would meet milestones, graduate grade 8, and I just remember
Yeah.
being sad that Claire wasn't here to do that, and then thinking of my sister, and I know she had mentioned, we had talks about that, and she said how hard it is to see kids going through life and reaching milestones, and Claire's not.
Yeah, it's hard on both sides, and it's hard to like have that perspective of both sides too, that you also, I'm sure, like, you wanted to protect your sister, right? Like,
Very
in
much
those
so.
moments I felt that way about when I was pregnant with Owen, and like Tamara's going through like all this tragedy, and we're being told
Well, we were
Gwen's not
pregnant
gonna-
at the same time, and I went early.
Yeah, and so I can understand your perspective in that too, because here I'm pregnant and Tamara's being told her child's not going to live past 48 hours, and so that's also, you want to protect the people that you love and what they're going through, and it's really hard on both sides. Very much.
Have a drink. Whew. I need a drink too. I'll have a drink here.
I'm wondering so much, because you talked about going to church, and you've talked about your faith too. Like, my family's always gone to church, and we grew up in that scene as well, and so I really do wonder, like, how has this changed your faith?
That too has been a roller coaster.
Right.
As I said before, like, I just kept going back. I'd not go to church, but then something would just draw me back. I just felt grounded spiritually, I guess.
Yeah.
Grew up in a family on both sides, and everybody went to church and developed relationships with God. But I've obviously went through many times, it's like, why me, and what are you doing to me, and if God is the greater power, what's happening here, like, why?
Right.
And again, having the conversation with Josh, and he'd be like, how can I go to church and sit there and be appreciative or whatever when he's done this to me? And I had no answer for him. It's like, I don't know, like, there will be a reason, we'll figure it out. So I've struggled this time.
Of course.
I mean, I've struggled because when I go into church, just keep thinking of that church full of people.
Right.
Josh's,
his people,
everything up at the front, all of it. But I've been angry. But again, there's no explanation, and I'm just struggling to get back to figuring it out.
Like we said, there's no timeline. And it's tiring. Some days it's like, I don't want to have to go to therapy. I don't want to have to explain my story. I don't want to have to get out of bed today. I just don't want a life. And it's frustrating that you have to some days.
Grief is exhausting.
So exhausting. It's very incredibly exhausting. And I remember, I would obviously have a lot of people reach out, and I'm sure same to you, and that have had loss of a child, and your sister, for instance. And there was one lady, and she said, I lost my son 30 years ago, and there's still days that I can't get out of bed, and that's okay. And I've realized that.
Yeah, and I think I've learned that. Like,
I hope
into the second year, it's like, you know what? Well, again, one of Josh's phrases, especially on a Sunday, which very much like his dad, it's like, they've been busy all weekend, and so Sundays he'd be in the basement watching movies, and he'd come up for food, and he's like, yeah, not participating in life today, I'll be in the basement.
Perfect.
And now there's days, like, if I'm not working or don't have anything scheduled, it's like, you know what, not participating in life today.
I'm gonna stick with that. I like that. I'm not participating today. What would Josh say?
Yeah,
I like
that's
that.
exactly what he would say. So and you do need those days. Like, it's so exhausting, and holding your head high and getting through life and trying to focus on life is exhausting.
And the hopes that will come with life, even though you've been thrown so many hardships, you still hold on to that. That hope.
I'm wondering, like, we've talked about spirituality, so I want to stay stuck on this. Have you ever, like seeked out a medium or done anything like that?
That's a question. I do have some stories. After Brad's passing, I was tempted. I had looked up a few mediums, but I was a little skeptical and fearful. And so my sister, I think it was 2021, she sold a chair or something on Facebook Marketplace. And these people showed up to pick it up. They were outside. And this man was in the passenger seat, and they made the deal. And he had said to her, he was looking at the house, and he said, "Did you have a daughter that passed?" And Kelly was floored.
Yeah.
And he pointed at the bedroom window. He goes, "Is that her bedroom?"
Oh my gosh.
So then that just was a long, long conversation. He was lovely. Not like, it was just out of the goodness of his heart. And he
I
left.
had to share this. Yeah.
And he left saying, "I hope that this brings you some comfort," because he had told her, told Kelly that Claire was in a good place and different things. So anyways, there was like goosebumps. Like, it was an amazing story. And it gave Kelly some comfort. So after Josh passed, I thought about a medium. Like, I think as a mom, like, I was just so lost. Like, he left so suddenly, and he's my baby, and where is he, and how is he? And
you lived your life protecting him.
Sorry.
No,
So
take your time.
anyways, my sister, I had talked about the mediums that you see advertised or social media, whatever. And so my sister said to me, she goes, "What about that guy that came to see me?" And not to give away like any information, but like, he did it out of the goodness of his heart. And so my sister randomly messaged him, text, and said, "Hey, you had mentioned that," and he did. He said, "If you ever want to get together and an update or whatever with your daughter, just message me." So my sister messaged him, and all she said was, "Could we get together?" And I still have screenshots of the messages. And he said, "Sure, anytime. What works for you?" And so Kelly picked a day and asked me about it. It's like, absolutely, I'll go with you. And so then she messaged back and she said, "Can I bring a friend?" And his response a little bit later was like, "Yes, absolutely, bring your friend, but we need to move our date up. I have to see this friend soon. She just lost her son."
Oh my God.
And this was just random and over text.
Yeah.
So we went, and again, I'm kind of skeptical. Like,
Of course.
Going in,
Yeah, and
not knowing what to expect.
anyways, and it was just like, it was truly a conversation. And he said, he started out and he said, "Your son is very, very angry that all this happened. He didn't want to leave you. He didn't want to leave, or he's so sorry this happened. It was not meant to happen." And I just was stopped dead in my tracks. And it just, the whole conversation was so freaky accurate. And so he actually goes, "Ooh, your son was a lot." So accurate.
You're like, "Yes, we're talking about the same person."
Yep, now we've got it. And he actually was like, "What was with the mullet?" Because you hated the mullet, but I can see an image of a mullet.
I can see the mullet.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, the mullet, yeah. So we had a conversation, and all of it was accurate. He could identify who Josh was with. And I could relate, I knew. And then I left, and he messaged me a couple weeks later, and he's like, "Can you come back and see me?" I go, "Okay." I'm a little freaked out. And so my sister's like, "Yeah, I'll pick you up, we're going." And then something came up that she couldn't go with me, but we just sat on a park bench and talked. And he's like, "Your son is just," I don't know how he phrased it, like, constantly bugging this poor medium. And he just had a few more messages, and it was, a lot of the message was sort of care and concern about people. Like Terry had a doctor's appointment for a heart thing, and it's like, make him go. He cannot not go. Make him go. And just messages like that. And
yeah,
there's kind of a connection to another story. I don't know how to bring this one in.
No, you go ahead. It's your
Both
episode.
feet, just jump in.
It's a lot.
Wow.
You can edit this part if you
No,
need
no.
to.
Go
No,
ahead.
we don't want to
So
edit anything.
I'll
We're
go
good.
back to the medium, but another part of the story was that connects is going back to the day Josh died. He was on his four-wheeler. Beautiful sunny day. He stopped to get takeout and candy to take back to the hunting camp. And when he got into his four-wheeler accident, it was like on a gravel road, and there was a man that came up on his four-wheeler with his wife and saw Josh and what had happened. And ironically, he was a retired first responder from the Toronto area.
Oh, wow.
And so he knew like what to do to keep Josh until the ambulance, because someone had called ahead.
Okay.
Or, sorry, that part's a little, he might have called. Anyways, he stayed with Josh like for 20 minutes, and then they put him in the ambulance, and then
Don't be sorry.
Yeah, you don't need to be sorry.
Anyways, things didn't go well, and so this man that stayed with Josh just backed away when EMS got there and let them do their thing. And when the ambulance door came out and the first responders come out, and just they were saying, we lost him. So this man just had been standing back watching. Anyways, we didn't know any of this till months after Josh passed, because this man had lived in the area, and somehow he found Terry and Terry's farm, and he came to him and he said, I don't know if you want to hear this, if it's going to make you feel better or not feel better, but Josh was an amazing kid, and I just want to, if I can give you a little piece, I'll tell you what happened while I spent 20 minutes with him.
Right.
Anyways, it was in part, sorry.
Oh, it's
Take
okay.
your time.
Yeah, take all the time.
It did definitely give us comfort.
What did he say?
He explained what, and as a professional, like first responder, he explained what his perspective of Josh's four-wheeler accident was, and what injuries he thought he had, and kept Josh still and what he needed to do until the ambulance arrived, and just some of the conversations. And he was a great kid, like he was fun, and he was and Josh rode four-wheelers from, well, obviously 3 years old, and before his accident, he bought this old jalopy of a four-wheeler, like old and slower than things he had. And he said, he was like, Mom, I'm adulting. Like, this is old and it's cheap and it's slow, and this will do me. It's all I need.
Yeah, just leisurely.
Yeah. So anyways, this man explained what he had seen around the accident and the conversation, and it has provided us comfort. I mean, it was pretty much the same story that the EMS has also had. But Terry visited with this man for a while, and it's kind of a weird story, but the man was quite affected by meeting Josh and what had happened. And during Terry and this guy's conversation, he said there was only one other in all the years that I worked EMS, there was one other situation that really bothered me, and it was the death of a baby, newborn. And there was a few more details that with the story, but so the death of this newborn really affected him, and he says like this Josh's story too has just really affected him. And so going back to the medium story, the second time I had gone, I said, who is he with now? And he explained a couple people that I could relate to in terms of size. And he says, who's the newborn? Who's the newborn? And it described, and again, I kind of won't go into details, but described the way that the newborn passed, which was the exact same way that this man described it.
With him.
And it just, yeah, it was like so many thoughts, like in terms of mediumship, in terms of like all of it. It just was.
I always say you can't create energy nor destroy it. So how amazing is it for some to be able to open up those floodgates and let that in?
Yeah.
I hope that was able to bring you some closure, whatever closure.
Yeah, it definitely was.
You can have.
I mean, I had just talked to Josh before this happened, and it was a great day, and he was in a great mood, and he was heading back to hunt at 3 p.m. and it just, because your mind goes so many different places, like what happened. And unfortunately, part of the process that I did go through twice was having a coroner call. Yeah. Which was hard to hear, and they're going based on different things to tell their perception, but to hear it right from him and to know what happened was comforting.
From somebody not having to just show up like a coroner would, or
and to put a face to have those last moments for Josh.
Yeah, and it did, like,
friendly face. It's okay.
He spent his last minutes basically in the arms of a very kind person.
It probably brought a little comfort, maybe, or.
And I'm at that point, like, Josh was okay, like not okay, but talking, and they had conversation, and I feel like it did help and comfort knowing that information.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
I would love to know, like, we've talked about your faith and things. I know, like, when we were just talking about Brad, you mentioned we were talking about people pleasing and having those like tendencies in ourselves. Is there anything that you're doing right now for yourself to take time for yourself? Like, what's this healing journey look like for you?
I'm trying really, really, really hard. I did not know that I was a people pleaser as bad as I am.
Okay.
Maybe to a fault.
I'm like, you're a people pleaser. You're like, if you say so.
Then I am.
I've learned that through. I've been told by a professional that I am, and I need to work on it.
Okay, I hear you.
Yeah, I'm not good at it. I'm trying.
Yeah.
But, there's people in my life that
need
me. They need things. If I can do things to help them, to make things easier for them, I do. And I worry about everybody. And on that note, I did book a trip to Mexico.
When are you going?
Can we come?
Sure. Oh, it's gonna be fun.
Amazing.
It's 3 weeks.
Good for you.
Good for you. Is this
but
your
it was
first
a struggle
vacation?
Because Terry can't go.
Okay.
Farm life. And it's a group, my sister and a couple girls, that we just decided we need a break.
Let's do
You deserve it.
It was hard. I had to back out of the long group chats and just book it. I'll give you my Visa card and just book it.
Sometimes those do get a little overwhelming.
But it is, but it's hard. Like, you just.
Sometimes you just, again, what Josh would say is, You know, I'm
not participating.
I'm not
in life
participating
today.
in life today, so I'm going to Mexico.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm not participating in life for a
Good
week.
for you.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Beach
deserve
chair and a
that.
book.
And a book. I love that.
Yeah,
And I think, you know, you mentioned about going back to therapy this time around, and we're all very fortunate enough to know your therapist.
Oh, she's amazing. And honestly, again, I was going full blast after Josh's passing, people coming and going, things to do. And on Monday after his accident, obviously we're just in the planning stages of everything, and it was a real whirlwind. But I had gotten a call from my family doctor, and it's like, I'm so sorry, I heard this happened, and we chatted, and she said, do you mind if I put a referral in for a therapist? You don't have to feel like you need to go. So days went by, and like obviously my phone was blowing up
Of course.
always, but I got a message from a therapist in town that I'd been referred to. Lovely message, and it's like, you know, when you feel ready. And so I just kind of dismissed it. And she called back a few more times, thank goodness, and left messages. Lovely. And then I just had in my head, I think I just, in a moment, I was like, okay, I'll do it because I've just lost a child.
Right.
I need to go to therapy. It's 2024. It's the thing to do. And now, a year and a half later, I'm still there, and I have learned so much about myself. I have learned, you know, just ways to navigate through this whole journey.
Right.
And I've learned I'm a people pleaser. Tell Joe to Google good girl syndrome because I'm that too.
Oh, I haven't heard of this
Google it.
Okay.
And
Put a link in the bottom description here.
Well, I bet she's very happy that you're taking this trip for yourself, and I know I'm happy you are too.
I think she'll be shocked to hear.
Okay.
This is good though.
It's a
Shocked in a good way.
The Gwen Effect exclusive.
Only on here.
There you go.
I love that. You know what? You deserve it. And like, I saw this post recently about how, you know, parents, just people, like they say like you can't pour from an empty cup, but you do. You know, you do. So I'm glad to hear that you're taking time.
Absolutely, that's a
Good girl
phrase.
syndrome, the universal truth that you cannot please everybody.
Okay.
Do you want to? Can we hear him? I don't think we can hear him
The
on mics.
universal truth, yeah, I think is camera, audio. The universal truth that you can't please everybody.
Is the good girl
The
syndrome.
universal truth that you can't please everybody.
Accepting that truth.
Oh, that's a hard one.
That
That's
is a hard
really
one.
hard one.
Especially if you're a people pleaser.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very hard.
But how rewarding is it when you just say no to things?
How rewarding is it when you do please everyone?
No, it's not, because you're not pleasing yourself. You're pleasing everybody.
Well, it does. It feels really good to please somebody.
Yeah.
Like it feels
It
good
does.
to do something for someone.
Somebody,
but at the same
but-
time, you're thinking like, shit, I could have done
It's
something
boundaries.
else.
Boundaries.
Yes, that's a huge
That's a whole
word
other
too.
thing, too.
It's a huge word that I've learned about in therapy.
Yeah, I'm working on them. We're all working
Therapy's
on
life
them.
changing, and I know for myself, like my therapist, we had her on here as well, Trisha, and she was a resident to, can we say Cassandra? Hey, Cass and Trisha. But we are, they're lifesavers, and if it wasn't for Trisha, and I'm sure you feel the same way about Cass, where would we be?
Oh,
You know,
that's a scary thought. And like I said, I was literally just going to go for a few sessions.
Do my
just
diligence,
to-
people pleasing.
Yeah, if anybody asks, I've done it.
Yeah.
I did it.
But yeah, it's turned into
It's a lifestyle,
very
right?
therapeutic.
Can I ask a question? Sorry, it's always me. Like, I have one more question. Because you're doing that people pleasing, just listening to this unfold here. At what point in going to therapy did you start buying in and realizing that it was helping you? Was there like a real moment in that, or does it just happen over time?
No, because I think like Cassie led me into it.
Right.
And they've got such a way. And you're just, you're taking it all in, and then you walk out of there and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, you process that information, and but I feel like I've learned to recognize it.
Yeah.
Well, I did it last night at work. It was
That's the
crazy
hard
busy.
work.
It's like, well, I can't leave my coworkers like this. I'll just stay for a while.
Yep.
And it's like, anyways.
Yeah. I hear you.
Yeah.
Go the heck home. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Like,
Go the heck to Mexico.
Go to Mexico. Well, we really appreciate it. Like, I mean, it's been a lot for us to take in, so I can't even imagine how this has been for you, and it is your life, So just giving us a glimpse of these really vulnerable moments, we're very grateful. We're very grateful.
well, thank you for having me and letting me tell my story. It's definitely a different life.
Right.
They say that you get used to new normals with the passing, but not quite there yet with Josh. We had a really, I want to say unique, but a super special relationship. And as a lot of his friends, and he just was that person. And I don't know, the stories I've heard and the lives that he's touched, you always hear, like, is that the reason that he was here on earth? And
Right.
I hope he impacted people to what they say they did, and
He
it'll
most
be
certainly
lifelong
Absolutely.
memory.
I have no doubt in my mind. For
I mean,
sure.
I again, just seeing you and knowing Josh, not as well as many, but he was you and you were him. And I just hope you can leave here today knowing that, I think this will bring a lot of closure to a lot of people that loved him, just hearing you reminisce
and
about
also
him
to other parents that are grieving
and
too.
other parents,
It's just another level of how Josh has impacted other people and yourself, because you're a part of this journey too.
Yes, there's been a lot of things come to the surface, and realizations and wow moments, and it's I mean, it's indescribable. Like, it's just like losing a child and losing part of yourself, and
Right.
as we talked about everything, like moving on and trying to keep doing life with this always on your mind is
you move with, right? You don't really ever move on. It's more moving with, right? So, well, we love you.
We're really grateful.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for being here. I have one quick question. Now we'll wrap
I
it
thought
up.
that was us wrapping
my
it up.
question is, because we just talked about
We're gonna
this
keep
impact,
you here forever.
this impact that you're making, is there one small piece of advice that you could say to somebody that's been experiencing, even remotely, relatively, like one part of what you've been through?
Oh, she.
So much.
What do you feel like has been the best advice that you ever got?
I think I'd have to say that grief there's no path for it. It's all over the place. Just go with it. You do you, and take those days for yourself, and do not feel guilty about it.
Right. I love that one, especially for you and where you are in your life right now.
I'm working on it.
That's lovely. Well, we're really grateful.
And as Josh would say, we're just not going to
Participate in life today.
Love it. New motto.
I might have one of those days this weekend. I don't know.
New motto.
Absolutely.
Well, cheers, guys. Thank you for joining us today. And
thank you
we're
again.
really appreciative. So don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And Joe's pointing at something. So we always forget the ending.
Oh, please
Like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.